Ty Collins, and today on the Lawrence University Career Center podcast, we're joined by Bella Sgriccia from the Lawrence class of 2022. Bella earned her Bachelor of Arts in Economics and completed internships with the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, and the International Rescue Committee. She also worked in the admissions office and the Career Center. Today, she's a Kiva Capital Access Manager for WWBIC, which is the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation. Bella, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with your current role. Tell us about WWBIC, Kiva, and what you do as a Capital Access Manager.
Yeah, so I'm currently a Kiva Capital Access Manager at Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation, also known as WWBIC. WWBIC's been around for almost 35 years, I want to say. And we support small businesses through over 500 free business trainings a year, hiring accountants, lawyers, business consultants, and bankers to help low to moderate income individuals get started with their small businesses. And we also offer loans. We offer loans from $1,000 to $350,000, and the loans that I work with are the online lending platform organization called Kiva, and they are crowd-funded small loans, $1,000 to $15,000 with 0% interest. So I get to work with I'm the very first step towards access to capital. I get to work with people who are just getting started, and I get so excited to help them and to help them grow and become bankable, because our goal at WWBIC and Kiva is to support businesses and get them to where banks can support them in the long term. The more we can pass on to banks, the better, because that means we're doing our job to getting people greater and better access to capital through time.
Can you give us an example of the type of client you normally work with? Who's the average customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. The average, I think the people that I work with are not average at all. In the sense that I guess the characteristics that I normally get are people who are self-driven, very motivated, and often people who become entrepreneurs are people who don't fit into the current economy. People who don't feel like they have a place in the regular 9-to-5 office job. So that includes people of low income, people who don't fit into the culture, returning citizens who feel like they are not even allowed to step foot into an office or get office opportunities, to people who have disabilities, and often offices who aren't, very willing to give as many accommodations. Oftentimes people want to work for themselves so that they can create the best environment and experience for them. So I often work with people who, in so many words, don't fit in to our regular economy and who have so much to contribute. So I really feel privileged to be able to work with the group of people that I do, because they're self-driven, motivated, and so creative. And I get to be the first person to help them on that journey.
So WWBIC and Kiva is a nonprofit organization. I know you've not yet had the chance to work in a for-profit setting yet, so it might be difficult to compare, but can you describe what it's like to work in a nonprofit organization? Many Lawrence students aspire to do that kind of thing. What are they getting into? You can discuss the work environment, your schedule, pay, expectations, whatever you want. Just kind of give us an idea of what the nonprofit workspace looks like.
It's really interesting. At a for-profit, I used to work at the U.S. Embassy as an intern, and while I didn't work for them for a really long time, I didn't really know where my money was coming from. But at a nonprofit, you know exactly where your money is coming from, because oftentimes it's through state grants and funding that we personally applied for, and then we have our loans that have the WWBIC loans that have interest rates. I know exactly how and where all the money for all the departments is coming from, so it's kind of interesting to know how the nonprofit or how an organization works behind the scenes. You get really into it, and at a nonprofit, you're kind of expected to fill more roles than you would in a for-profit organization. Nonprofits are organized differently, so you might have a really rigid structure in a for-profit organization, but within the nonprofit, you might have specific programs or departments that you're working for, and they all kind of intertwine, because as an organization, you're supporting each and every person that you work with to contribute to a mission. I don't know if that makes too much sense, but one thing that I thought coming in was that if I was going to work for a nonprofit, I was either going to be an unpaid intern and maybe get a job that paid me half of what it would take to pay for my living expenses. And then there's a gap, and then there's people that get paid a livable wage. And I just didn't understand how. I knew what I wanted to do and the why, but I just didn't understand how I was going to make a living off of this. But nonprofits like WWBIC made it possible for me to realize that there are steps that to being paid a living wage, and that there are possibilities that aren't as rich as I thought they were. So I get to work in my program, and I get paid a living wage, and I get to do what I do. Now, is the pay competitive to a for-profit organization? Of course not. So you are kind of sacrificing some of that pay. But I am a person that if I working, I need to know what I'm working for, and it has to be a mission I believe in. So that's why I work for a nonprofit like WWBIC, because I truly adore and love the mission, and I know why I go to work every day. And that in of itself is worth that pay gap. And then a lot of times in nonprofits, you do have to prove yourself, and so you might not get paid as much as you want entering, but there usually is a pay increase every year, so you can expect that. But you're also tied to deliverables within a grant. So for a for-profit organization, they might give you a goal, but for a nonprofit, all the grants that contribute to your income, they all have different metrics you have to meet. So you're evaluated based on those metrics that different organizations give you in order to qualify for the money. So for example, I work for the city. Part of my funding comes from the city of Madison, and I work with them in order to create a certain amount of opportunities for local Madison small businesses. So your goals in a nonprofit are also different.
So you started to answer this next question in your last answer, but why do you do what you do, and how do you find personal fulfillment in your position?
That's a really good question. And it's a question I think everybody should think about. I grew up abroad. My mom works for United States Agency for International Development and is an economic development specialist. She's supported development projects around the world, giving people tools to be self-sustainable, and those goals are reflected in my own. I too wanted to work for a place that would give people tools to be independent and self-sustaining. I often think that people just need that one tool to get the ball rolling. So I also wanted to work in economic development. So when I graduated from Lawrence, I went into apply for Peace Corps for the business development volunteer opportunity. And the whole process took a year, and I had done absolutely everything I possibly could. I got through their interview rounds, I got through their resume, and I got through the background check, and I had done all the health labs that they asked for, and at the very end I had my plane ticket, and I was ready to go be a volunteer and figure out what kind of skills I had or whatever I was strongest at, so I could find a nonprofit after Peace Corps and start growing my skills from there. But at the last minute I couldn't go, and so I was like, oh my gosh. The only thing I knew in terms of starting at a nonprofit was that you needed some sort of experience, and I thought Peace Corps was the only option, and I'm like, well, there's nothing like Peace Corps. I proved myself wrong, because 2 months later I found WWBIC, and again, it's outreach into community. You get to work with community members every day. You get to support them and meet their needs. I get to work in reporting. I get to work in marketing. I get to do so many things, and I think that was really important for me, to be able to test all my skills in different areas to see what I enjoyed and what I liked and what I was good at. So I love WWBIC because it allows me to do outreach in the community just like I would have been able to do in Peace Corps. and it's mission driven to support low-income communities, and I get to do that in the United States, so I feel really honored to be able to do that.
What surprised you most about the transition from being a Lawrence student to being a professional, being out in the workforce?
As a Lawrence student, I did not feel like I was anything other than ordinary. My grades were okay. I was not good at math, and I was an econ major. I often felt overlooked, and I didn't really understand how skills that I had been learning in class were going to apply in the real world. And I felt like I had worked so hard at Lawrence, but I had no idea what skills I would be bringing into the workplace. And I was really scared. I think applying for jobs, I didn't really believe that I was qualified to be in those positions. And then I joined WWBIC, and then I realized that I had a ton to offer, and that really boosted my confidence. And I want people to know that you're learning stuff that you won't even realize will be helpful. LOST's quantitative decision-making class helped me learn how to work Excel in a way that is such a powerful tool. It is not just a couple boxes with numbers in it. It can be numbers that you can visualize in systems and understand how different systems work together in unison. My Excel skills alone help me be one of the number one reporters in my company. I report on Kiva numbers, and I've reworked systems to make them more efficient. And I'm so proud of the work that I've done. And I didn't know that that was a skill that people didn't have. I thought that was common knowledge. My abilities to write well. People will tell you this from the day that you enter first year studies. Writing's important, writing's important, writing's important. Well, it can't be that important. I'm telling you it's really important, because even as a financial person, I help people write their stories every day in 350 words or less. And they have to come across who they are, why they want what they want, and why they're here for a loan, and why their community should care. And being concise in that language is so important. So my skills as a writer were so important, and I had no idea that I would be a storyteller. As someone with an econ degree, being able to represent your information well is so important, especially when you're working with investors and funders and people who maybe don't understand numbers. You have to make them understandable. So there's that education aspect. There's learning how to visualize stuff. So when I worked with UTI, for example, I learned how to work in Canva, and I used that to create the Kiva Guide, which is a resource that bankers, clients, partners, everybody will use to be able to understand Kiva. And I was able to create this amazing resource because of the knowledge that I had used in a part-time job at Lawrence. So I didn't realize how many skills what skills I was going to be using, and how much I had really learned. I didn't think that a very specific equation I had learned in my economics class was going to be applicable, and it wasn't. But the skills I was using to be creative, able to problem solve, to work around anything, those are all skills you need to have in a nonprofit, because things aren't handed to you. You have to work for them. You have to learn how different tools you're given can be used to the max. So you have to be creative, and I think Laurentians are. You're faced with having to take all these classes as a liberal arts student, and you have to figure out things that you don't enjoy or that you don't understand. When I was given R squared to figure out, that scared me so much. But my ability to figure it out was the skill instead of the actual thing. So I hope Laurentians know just how much you are learning, even though it doesn't feel like it. And that you'll be able to contribute to the workforce, and you'll be great.
All right, that was a great answer. Thank you. What about some of your external experiences during your time at Lawrence? What did you find helpful about those?
I really do hope that Laurentians take advantage of the Career Center. Having work experience is really helpful. How do I write professional emails, stuff like that. So going to the Career Center when I was a first year was really important, just to get a sense of what kind of experiences should I be adding on to my education. What would prepare myself for beyond Lawrence. And a lot of people don't want to think about that because it's scary. But you don't have to think about that end goal right now. You just think about, how can I add experience or an experience to my college education that would help me learn about the outside world? And the things that you learn that you don't enjoy are just as important as the things that you find out that you do enjoy and are good at. So when I was in first year, I did research with a professor, Dr. Del Toro, and his bee project. And I learned that I was so bad at biology, but I really enjoyed stuff in the field. I really liked those field trips, and I really liked working with him and doing that kind of research. And I liked playing around with the numbers, and I was not good at any of the labs, but I really enjoyed that. And then I interned at the U.S. Embassy after my first year and after my second year as well. No, actually the second year is when COVID happened. So it was really, I interned at the U.S. Embassy in public affairs. And I was by no means a communications person and was not going to become one, but I was able to create that internship and gear it towards things I was interested in. So I did presentations on culture in the United States to the Egyptian public, and I was able to find out what things people wanted to learn and do research and do presentations on all sorts of things. So I got to really just have fun with that one. And I created so many really great connections there. And then I interned at the International Rescue Committee, not the first year of COVID, but probably my junior year, the summer of my junior year, and then that whole year. And what I was able to do is work with refugees. What happened is Afghanistan had fallen, and I felt helpless. And I wanted to do something, and I thought, what could I do? I could work at the International Rescue Committee, and I could welcome them with everything that I had to give. And so I worked with the IRC. I worked with clients and being able to give them jobs. I wrote resumes, which is a skill that I learned when I worked in the Career Center. I was able to get people jobs, families, opportunities, and get them to trainings. I helped over 75 people in my year as a Laurentian. And that is such an impactful thing that I didn't think I could do as a college student. My on-campus jobs, I worked as a tour guide. And that was interesting because I wasn't going to be a tour guide when I graduated, but I learned how to pitch really well. I had to pitch myself every single day. I had to pitch Lawrence every day. I got to figure out what things made people interested and connected to me and my organization. And so learning how to present yourself and introduce yourselves, that's really important stuff because first impressions make a difference. And I got to play with it because I had 2 or 3 tours a week. So I got to play around with different introductions. That was a really important skill, and I'm clearly not a tour guide, but I still use those skills every day. And then as an M&M in my senior year, I learned Canva, which I mentioned helps me do my job today, helped me create a learning resource for my clients. And I was able to play around with skills that I had learned in my quantitative decision-making class by working in Excel. I think people don't realize that Lawrence jobs, while they may not pay as well as external jobs in Appleton, you're kind of able to recreate those experiences to build your resumes. So if you tell Ty, hey, I want to work in Excel, he was like, great, that's awesome. Here's some things that you can do and work with. Hey, Ty, I want to learn more about marketing. Oh, well, I'm doing this series then. Do you want to, learn a little bit about this? Hey, I'm interested in event planning. Well, Career Center is doing an event. You can try to do that. So you can kind of turn those work experiences into something that you want to do. Laurentians and Lawrence employees all want to help you succeed and grow, and they will give you those opportunities if you ask. You just have to ask. So I really do recommend taking a job that does not seem at all like what you want to do in your professional lives, because it'll give you a skill that you had no idea you needed.
It just gave me less work to do. Looking back at your overall time at Lawrence, what was your best experience, and is there anything Lawrence could have done better to prepare you for what came next, and is there anything you could have done or would have done differently? What would that have been?
When I thought I was majoring in economics, I pictured hands-on work as much as possible. And I knew we had to get through the theory to be able to understand how it applied to real life situations. But I craved and lacked that at Lawrence. I didn't get as many hands-on opportunities as I would like. And granted, I had 1.5 years of normalcy before COVID hit, so I know I can't speak to that too much. But in high school, I took a higher level economics class, and you practiced theory alongside hands-on experiences, and that is what made me decide to major in economics. So I really, really wish Lawrence had given me more hands-on experiences and encouraged me to use it and do it during class time. I felt like I got a math major disguised as an econ major because of all the theoretical math that I did, and that was not really what I wanted to do. I could not have been more appreciative towards the Academic Center for Success, for Professor Loest, who I feel like gave me my diploma in a sense, because his quantitative decision-making class I will promote till the end of time. It was incredible to be able to work with real company data and be able to manipulate it and see what outcomes and what systems they needed to keep track of, and how do you make that understandable? How do you make data, visualize it in a way that people who don't like data will understand it and get your vision? And how will you make it so that people who have to work within your Excel data can follow along? It was so important, and it was using and teaching you a skill, and it combined real life experience, and that's what I really wanted. Professor Scran's social entrepreneurship class and the INE 100 and 300, where you get to create your own project, they're daunting because it's your idea on the line, and you have to first create an idea, and that's daunting in of itself, but those were all incredible experiences. I was so happy that Lawrence had those opportunities out there for students. Anything that you can get your hands on and experience for your own, I think was just the best experiences that I could get at Lawrence. Was anything I could get my hands on, anything I could try and test my skills, because they'll teach you all these things in class and you go, I really want to see how my skills compare to the real world and real world data. And it's not enough to suggest that you do it in a club. It's something that should be encouraged in class. Another thing I really enjoyed were discussions, because when people asked you what you thought, you got to formulate and express yourself and practice doing that. When professors do it lecture style, they're not really asking you to think. But active thinking is what gets you to those really creative, cool ideas. Is, well, what if we did this, or what if we did that? Those conversations that build curiosities in your head, those are what will take you places. So I really hope that professors continue to have those discussion classes.
So we have time for one more question, and we're going to kind of go back to your job for this one. We've talked a lot about what you enjoy about your job, but not every job is perfect. Is there anything you find frustrating or difficult about your job that people should be aware of? Every job is going to have difficult and frustrating parts. What should they watch out for?
Every office has its own office culture. And as a new person, it can be really daunting to find a way to become a part of that. People have different work personalities, and when they're critiquing your work, or they're brushing off your program, or they don't represent you well, it can sometimes feel like a personal attack. And so something I found incredibly helpful in my job is to just learn to get to know everybody, just like you get to know your professors and what their grading expectations are and what their grammatical structures that they like, or if there's a specific pen they like you to use. It's the same in the workplace. Understand how people work so that you can work best with others. It is so hard to feel like, you're getting shot down, but I think getting to know your surroundings and getting to know how people work will really help you in the long run. And also, I don't know if people do this, but when I get upset or when I feel like I'm being personally attacked, I step away for a second, and I breathe, and I ask someone I can trust who understands the organization. One of my mentors, Heather Lex, she was my first boss at WWBIC, and she was incredible because she's worked there for, I think, 10, 15 years. And so she understands how things work really well. And when I got frustrated because I didn't understand how something worked, or I feel like it didn't get sufficient training and I felt like I was being thrown into things, she'd go, "You're reading this situation correctly. How are you going to support yourself or advocate for yourself?" Or she'd go, "This is just how this person works, and here's how we can come up with a plan so that you can respond to them in a professional way." I think it's so easy to get riled up, but you can't respond to people like you would in a classroom setting. You can't go, "Well, that was just rude." You have to find a way to make these conversations productive so you can still get your job done at the end of the day. So how are you going to turn frustrating situations into something that you're learning from and something that you're growing from and that you're pushing forward with? So Heather was kind of like my anchor, and I found that anchor, and she still helps me to this day. And so does my new boss, Lisa Sullivan. Both of them have worked at WWBIC a long time, and I just ask them, and I say, "This is how I'm reading this situation. Is this how you see it?" Their perspectives really give me perspective, because as someone who's newer to the organization, I just don't know how things function, and some things that frustrate me and make me angry are some things that people can well understand and can well help me navigate, so I can still do my job, and I can be frustrated and feel my emotions, but at the end of the day, I can also respond in a professional way that gets me where I need to go.
And that is all the time we have for today. Bella, Kiva Capital Access Manager at WWBIC, thank you so much for joining us on the Lawrence University Career Center podcast.
Absolutely. I hope it was helpful.